Hello, welcome back to the Never Iron Anything Comics Review Podcast. It's episode 161. This week I'm rejoined by regular co-host Alan Henderson, who suggested this book's read. It's good to have you back, man. How you doing?
Guess who's back? Back again. Yeah, no, it seems like it's been a while. You and I have both been very busy people.
Yeah,
very, very busy.
It's been
people
stupidly busy. Obviously, how was Scottish New Year? How was that?
No, something like that. Scottish New Year's. Yeah, it was. The good whiskey was taken down and dusted off, and it was. Everyone had a good time from that sort of side of things.
Do you do all that? Like, is it called first footing? Is that what they call it up there? Where you go to knock someone's door?
Well, no. It's one of the. It's one of those things that you used to do for a while. It's all about the first person through your door suggests the type of luck that you're going to have for the year ahead. And it's supposed to be if it's a tall, dark, handsome man, you're going to get good luck, and if it's a blonde, you're not. Which makes me always wonder, whatever happened to the Aryan race.
I'm quite welcome to a blonde turning up, but to be fair, it's never good news, is it? It never turns out well. Yeah.
Well, not at 5 minutes past midnight on New Year's Day.
Yeah. I just watch Hootenanny and go to bed. You know. Did you get any comics for Christmas? What about books for Christmas? Do you get anything like that?
Did I get no? Did I buy myself a bunch of stuff off eBay?
You bought a Perishers piece of art I saw today.
Yes, I got a nice Perishers piece of art, drawn by Bill Miven, written by Morris Dodd, from the late 90s, I think.
Nice.
Thereabouts. So it was a 3-panel comic strip, which is right up my alley, as you might imagine. And then I bought a couple of trades that have been wanted for a while. When I say trades, I mean a book from the 1970s.
Oh, you did? I saw that. You'd done that. You finally gave in and got something, didn't you? Did you find it for a decent price, that Batman book?
I did, yeah. I'd still love to get the hardcover, but you can never see that for a decent price or a good quality.
Okay.
So I got a UK printing of it that's not the usual UK printing. Okay. It's just one of these weird sub-companies, you know what I mean? To say, well, it's there. It's got Batman from the 1930s to the 1970s.
Oh, I know the one. Oh, yeah, I like that. Yeah,
published
that is
in
great.
1972 or something like that. So it's a few-year-old book anyway. So.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, so that was just me buying myself books, and it's not because woe is me. It's just that Mrs. H knows full well that she doesn't know where to begin.
We've got everything already, Hal, let's face it.
I've got everything that I would want. Yeah, I always say that if I want it, I'm going to go out and buy it. And if I want it and I've not bought it, it's probably because I can't afford it, and therefore she can't either. So they're just as well to avoid everything. Yeah. But yourself, what was the?
Well, Vince, Dan, and Tom always get me comics, but I got mostly socks. And I asked for a bookshelf because I got this like garden room now. Not calling it a shed. I'm not allowed to call it that apparently. But I've got a couple of bookshelves for that, and I need a next one. So I've got like a comics research set of shelves now, which I'll send you a picture of later because I'm very excited by it. There's nothing more exciting than putting your books on a shelf. It's weird, but you know.
Well, you've been going through the recataloguing phase. Something that I intend to do in about 5 years' time when I retire.
Yeah.
Put the time aside and start reorganising things. As you say, it's the finding the things that you forgot you had.
Big time, yeah.
Somebody posted something on the Slack the other day about getting an issue of New Teen Titans, and I went, "Oh, that's in that George Perez portfolio," which led me to go digging in our cupboards to find the George Perez portfolio and go, "Whoa, look at this!" and flick through through that and thinking, and I've not had this down out that back of that cupboard for a number of years.
Yeah,
and so no, it's there's all those. I always say I know for a fact I've got boxes in the loft where I've deliberately put interesting things in them and then kind of close the box up and kind of going, right, that's my time capsule to be opened at some point once I've forgotten what's inside it.
Oh yeah, and that's the pleasure, isn't it? That's the pleasure of having Longbox Mountain and all this sort of thing, is that you can, and I've been doing that. But I'll tell you what, interesting, because I've been trying to catalogue a couple of boxes a day, which is good going on a day off, because I end up like looking at everything, But I have to say, being a DC guy, you'd know this, that there's no set of comics that hold their price better, I reckon, than Batman and Detective. The stuff that I've been looking at on eBay, because I've created like a couple of boxes for just comics that are worth, let's say, over 30 quid each.
Yeah.
Loads of Batman stuff is. I was surprised. You know.
It always has a market, I suppose.
Yeah.
And everybody wants the long run, so therefore they're always going to be filling the gaps.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff that's come up though. Some like I reread the Elementals run the other day because I found that box and immediately then went to Krypton Comics and filled in the 2 issues I thought that I had that I can't find, and then found them two hours later. It's just one of those sort of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
I remember tidying out, or we were clearing out the science fiction bookshop in Edinburgh when it moved.
Okay.
When it formally took the title Forbidden Planet the first time around. And the owner at that point in time emptied his locker space into the old shop so that we could resort all of the comics and all the back issues. And it's quite disheartening eventually when you sort a whole, several thousand or several tens of thousands of comics and you end up with a long box or that's all just the one issue.
Right.
And
yeah.
it's like, it's bad enough when you go through your own comics and you find a duplicate. It's when you open a box and you go, oh, it's the same issue over and over.
X-Force
over.
1. There you go. Yeah, it's like that. Yeah. Death of Superman. Here we go again. It's a bit like that, isn't it? Yeah. There's a regularly at the Mart for a while. There used to be a box that was half X-Force 1. Yeah. What a shame, eh? Anyway, on
Somebody
to
will want it somewhere.
Somewhere.
Yes, tonight.
What have you chosen, dude?
So, Green Arrow is facing one of his gravest crises of his career, his midlife crisis. What I've put forward as the book to read is Mike Grell's Green Arrow, The Longbow Hunters.
Fucking gold. Love this book. Yeah.
Originally published in 1987, issue 1 of which actually came out the same month as issue 1 of The Shadow.
Okay.
The Zankiewicz cover and
I know
anyway.
Yeah.
Now, I think one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this book is it's kind of a forgotten book that's really important for the history of comics, I think.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I think it's forgotten is it sits between its publication time is after Dark Knight, but before Killing Joke.
Okay.
And therefore it sits in the era, and at the same time Watchmen was coming out as well. So it very sits in that era of going, this is the dawn of what became the Dark Age of comics.
Yeah.
It's sort of the post-Bronze Age period. And it's a book that fundamentally changed the tone of the ongoing series and titles of DC as a whole.
Yeah.
And therefore the marketplace at large. Now, I don't, you could say, well, Dark Knight and Killing Joke also did that, but they were very much standalone.
Yeah.
And they were Batman, so they were Elseworlds before Elseworlds existed. While Longbow Hunters wasn't. This is kind of set in continuity.
Yeah, in a weird continuity, isn't it? Which I know we will talk about later, but which is referred to Earth-Grell by some people.
Yes.
Because it has this big turning point for him and a very and a face of reality, a face full of reality, doesn't it? It addresses so many of the themes of the 80s at the time. Genuinely, mate, one of my favourite books, easy in my top 10. I'm a massive fan of this. And like you said, the thing is with it is it led into an ongoing. We're not necessarily sure that initially it was meant to be, but it certainly did do that. And the themes of it lead into the ongoing as well. Themes and characters and situations lead into that. And I think what maybe... Because I put it as the third book. I've said this before. I've said Dark Knight, Watchmen, Longbow Hunters. For me, growing up, around that time, buying comics in comic shops, seeing the effect that it has on people and on the market and on customers and on sellers and on the shelf and stuff, I genuinely thought Longbow Hunters was one of the big ones, partly because it was an early prestige format as well, which we've talked about before, haven't we? Yeah.
And that's why I'm putting it in that sort of mix between Dark Knight and Killing Joke as well. In that mix of that, they were going. It was given this credence.
Yeah. Normally here I would invite you to give a little summary of it, but I mean, you're more than welcome to if you want to, but to me, it's about the tone of the book. I mean, things do happen in it, which a number of which we're going to talk about, which one have been quite controversial, but it was very much the age of legitimizing a superhero, and I'm going to put that in finger quotes, because there'll be an argument later as to whether he's a vigilante or a superhero. But yeah, it's an interesting
very much
period.
a depowered book.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting from that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, I think some of the actual storyline is essentially it's hunting the bad guy, drug
serial killer as well,
importer,
yeah.
and hunting a serial killer, and at the same time meeting up with something mystic from the east, and establishing a the yin and yang character of somebody who's the mysterious baddie that is also an archer type thing.
Yeah,
and that is the
in a very different way as well.
Of it.
Yeah,
yeah,
an interesting way.
But I think it's also a book that's different in terms of its. Well, see, it's not different in terms of what we had at the time of or back in the late 80s. This is all the covers here are painted. All the artwork is, I think I've used the word collage in my notes here.
Yeah,
where
there's certainly an element of that, isn't there?
There are certainly bits of it where you go, right, there's different panels that have been drawn in different ways, some of which are quite clearly painted, some of which are quite clearly the use of soft pastel pencils, and some of which has been done on coloured card that is then white pencil on dark card rather than the other way around to get a different effect. And for a lot of it, even on the cover of issue 1, you can actually see the texture of the paper that's been used because of the way that Mike Grell's actually produced that in terms of the actual painting that's there. And all of that creates a feel of going, there's an organic nature, and maybe it's just I'm overlaying the word green into meaning for the organic piece as well, but it feeds into the fact that this character was very much trying to be much more of an everyman than the Batman side of things as well.
It's got
the art.
The art has a romanticized. I mean, of the 3 books we mentioned, there is probably the prettiest. I'm going to say. It's the most painted. It's the most classical, maybe, I suppose, is a way of saying it. There's obvious influences of Adams and co. We'll talk about Grell in a minute. But let's rewind a little bit and just say let's focus a little bit on Green Arrow. What was your introduction to Green Arrow? Can you remember?
I have absolutely no idea. Because one of the things that amazed me actually reading after this is the fact that the Green Arrow series that comes out the back of this was the first time he had a series on his own. A title in his own right.
An ongoing. He'd had a mini, hadn't he? A 4-issue mini before this. But
given you that he's one of these characters, you think, he's always been there since the 1940s because he has. And it is just Robin Hood meets Batman and merge the two together, and you end up with a Green Arrow thing. And so for me, it probably would have been something through a Justice League.
Yeah, I'm the same, I guess.
This is probably where I would have come across him as a character.
Yeah. I'm drawn to the Archer characters, as you know. I think I was probably, because I'm more of a Marvel guy, I probably favoured Hawkeye before Green Arrow, and that probably led me into liking the Green Arrow character. It was always a bit more comedic. We'd had Hard Travelling Heroes, which was a deeper, more philosophical, socially realistic kind of take on it. So let's just quickly. So created by Mort Weisinger and George Papp, first appeared in November 1941, More Fun Comics 1973. More Fun Comics 73. Oliver Jonas Queen. Weisinger, like you say, took influences from Batman, Robin Hood, and a movie serial called The Green Archer. I'm not sure if you've seen that, but which in itself was based on a novel by Edgar Wallace. Which you can still find at around 20 quid if you want a hardback of it. He's had what I'm going to refer to as eras. We've had the Golden Age. Like you say, we've had the Silver Age. That includes the JLA stuff. Had obviously Neil Adams and Denny O'Neil stuff with Green Lantern. We've had, after this, we've had Kevin Smith's run on it. We've had Judd Winnick's run on it. We've had Green Arrow and Black Canary. We've had Connor Hawke, Rebirth. We've got a current series. We've had, I suppose, a reasonable landmark would be Andy Diggle and Jock's Green Arrow Year 1. And, of course, coming out of all that, we've had the Arrow TV series, which I actually watched. I didn't mind it.
I watched most of it. Certainly,
Yeah.
when it initially came on, it was good because it takes a lot of references directly from this and took an awful lot of references from the Year 1 storyline that Jock drew.
Yeah.
And brought the two of those together. But the concept of him wearing a hood and all that sort of stuff comes straight out of Longbow Hunters.
Yeah, it does.
Because that's where that design came from.
I'm not sure that, as much as I think Year 1's good, I think it gets a bit more credit than it should, because even the origin stuff, it was done before then. The island was done before then. Yeah, which is where the TV series leans heavily on Year 1. I think is from that. Yeah, so that's good. So what about Grell? Where was your introduction to him, do you think?
So I think it probably was actually through the ongoing series.
Okay.
That'd have been the first time that I would have recognised him there, because I didn't read the Longbow Hunters when it first came out. I wasn't really into comics at that point.
Right.
So because it was early 90s, or sorry,
Late
yeah,
80s,
the early 90s that I would have picked this up
Right.
as a possibly as a reprint of the series, or maybe the issues itself. Again, because it was so heavily promoted by people in the comic shop, going, "This is the other thing you want to get." And by the way, if you like that miniseries, you'll like this, and so on and so forth. And at that point, it was very much a feeling of this is the. He was a bit of an anti-hero as well.
Yeah.
That's weird. It's not the right wording. What I remember is that in terms of where he stood in the 90s, he was the hero who believed in the people and wanted to do the right thing. And, the fact he'd become mayor of the city and was trying to, just get things better. He was doing I've got the £1 billion and I'm actually going to spend it to make things better storyline
Of course.
that we always say
Yeah.
about Bruce Wayne. Therefore, it was a weird sort of flip on that. So that's kind of when I would have first got into Grell. And Grell was only writing that, and I think he was doing most of the covers for that series.
Yeah, and a couple of the spin-off.
Ed
He did
Hannigan.
the spin-off series, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was Ed Hannigan did a lot of the drawing, and his Batman work from the detective stuff in the 80s and 70s is, again, it's a great set of unforgotten pieces. I did meet Mike Grell at, I think it was the Boston Comic Con.
Okay. Yeah.
So there is a Shadowhead.
Oh, is there? I was going to ask you. I meant to
Somewhere
ask you
in
before
that
we started recording. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good stuff.
yeah.
He'd be brilliant for that, because he's got that whole Hal Foster, Al
exactly. He knows
Williamson vibe, isn't he?
He knows how to draw a hat.
He does. He wears one most of the time. Yeah.
He did, and he did when I saw him. So but I always got the feeling that he was an indie creator done good. That sounds fair. But that's because he had all that, as you say, I've got no affinity with Warlord. I know you do, and we'll probably talk about that.
Yeah.
But for me, it was about seeing all the work that he'd done with First and going, right, he did Badger, he did, and the work that he did with
Sable. Yeah.
Sable stuff, sorry.
Yeah.
But the other stuff that he did with Mike Gold.
Yeah, who's the editor? Yeah,
who's the editor
they
of
were
this.
friends, and this led into Longbow Hunters, didn't it? Because Gold was the one who brought him up.
How they came together. So all of that to me was like, he is that sort of creator that looks after the sounds, and you get the impression that he was the woke creator before we had such a thing, right? And I don't mean that
Certainly
in any sort of bad
socially
ways.
progressive, I think.
That's what I mean, and this is because I don't think woke's a bad word, but it was about saying, look, and it comes through with this series as well, about that change of going, if you do things, they have consequences.
Definitely.
And to me, that's what you could take from a lot of Mike Grell's work, where he goes, I'm going to write about things or do art in such a way that it's a case of, if this happens, there are consequences as to what we do with it.
Yeah, which is a really interesting aspect to LBH. I've got to be honest with you. The consequences of everything, and that's a thing that runs throughout the ongoing. I'm a massive fan of this ongoing. I reread it. I bought the omnibuses a couple of years ago and reread it over Christmas. So let's talk a little bit about Mike Grell. So born the 13th September 1947. His dad was a lumberjack, believe it or not. He rediscovered comics while serving in the US Air Force in Saigon in 1970. He saw the work of Neil Adams and Dick Giordano, and a buddy of his encouraged him to be a cartoonist. He refers to Neil Adams in the Tomorrow's interview, which is really great. We both read that. As the strongest individual influence on my art. I think he really respects the way he does, and you can see some that school, can't you, in his art? You know,
the facial expressions are straight from that, and the use of cross-hatching for shadow on a face.
Okay.
Again, I think is very much a sort of Neil Adams thing. In terms of the feel of it, yeah,
Dev. So a chance encounter at New York Comic Con back when it was elsewhere than it is now, with Irv Novick, led to him replacing Dave Cockrum on Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. I think he literally passed Dave Cockrum in the corridor and was given it, and it was something of a sort of baptism of complications that led to that. That's not a book to start, is it? When I had about 30 different characters at that time.
I was going to say, yeah.
Previous to that, he had some cartooning experience because he'd worked with Dale Messick on the Brenda Starr newspaper strip, and he jokes that Dale would do the faces and he would have to do the bodies, so that was his whole job. So that was his experience. He's worked extensively at DC, Batman Family, Aquaman, and even had an earlier go at Green Arrow story in a backup written by Elliot Maggin, and then he took the Legion of Superheroes on, and it was written by Cary Bates and for a short time as well Jim Shooter, and then Warlord. Now, have you ever read it, or is it just not your thing, man? Or I know we've never talked about it before.
One or two.
Yeah.
No, we've not. It's one of these things where I've read one or two issues. It's that classic one where it's not something like 300 odd issues or something like that.
Something mad. Yeah.
And it's that whole, where do you start? And I'm not really a big sword and sorcery person.
Okay.
And a lot of the covers make you look, despite the fact I like Cerebus, it's one of those ones where you're left going, oh, if I'm going to read this, I might as well just read Conan.
I was a bit like that at the time. Yeah, I think it was the art that drew me in, I think.
Yeah. So I've just never quite got there with it. And then you're left going, if there's 300 issues of that, and I've got 6,000 issues of other things I've not read, why would I add another 300 issues?
I know we're lovers of the app. Actually, they're releasing an issue a week at one point. They were releasing on the app, and it's worth looking at just for some of the page spreads and splashes and stuff like that. There's some gorgeous stuff in there. He finds his feet quickly on that book.
Yeah, it's classic 70s, early 80s DC comics, and as you say, the art in it. If anyone likes the the classical Adams, Aparo, Giordano type artwork, it's perfect for that. And but as I say, the storyline is just something that's never just drawn me in, partially because of its size. And you're left going, I don't know where to start.
Yeah, there was they did one of those black and white bind-ups, didn't they, a few years ago, which is I'd rather read it in colour. There's some great scenes in the snow. I'm a lover in the snow, but it's basically Pellucidorian is the phrase, is the adjective I've written, because it happens on the inside of the earth. You see what I mean? So it's not historical. It's actually happening inside the earth. He's a pilot and he ends up crashing inside this place. There's obviously
the joke about the fact that the face of Warlord looks exactly like the face that he ends up using on.
Well, that does happen in the comics, doesn't it? Yeah, that does come to and do we see a bit of that in the Justice League cartoon? I'm gonna say. Oh, there's a Warlord episode of it, isn't there?
I'd have to go and...
Yeah, I can't remember. It's been a while.
I think some of them are on Netflix.
Okay. And then after that, he went off to... Sorry to interrupt. He went off to Pacific First, which is where we got Star Slayer, which I'm going to say is where I first saw him. No, that's probably not true. I first saw him on Warlord, I'm going to say. Maybe Legion. But where I really began to notice his art was on Star Slayer and Pacific, which then moved... he was doing that with John Ostrander, and then moved to First Comics, where he started Sable, a TV, which was also a TV series, which you can also see on YouTube. I think it was like one of those TV series that's only like 12 episodes or something.
Yeah,
it's not as good as the comic. And then he stopped doing Sable, and I think there was a dispute where he wasn't getting paid by First. He quotes a story. I was listening to a podcast. Let me quote the name of it to you, called Warlord World's podcast, and he talks about being at a First Comics event at San Diego, and there was a free bar, and he was thinking, "That's my wages. You haven't paid me being shelled out that free bar." So he went off and did a couple of other things, which I think includes the Tarzan newspaper strip as well. Which, God, if anyone was ever suited for it, he was. And then Mike Gold goes back to DC and gives him a call, and says to him, "What do you want to do?" He says, "I've always fancied Batman." I think he'd had a go at it and wasn't happy with what he'd done. And I think Gold pitched him Green Arrow as an urban hunter, which I think really took his fancy, Grell, because he's always been an archer. He's very much into experimenting with old-fashioned weapons. I think he does that. He did a thing where he used to joust for an audience and stuff like that. He's quite the adventurous guy. Yeah. I always think of him as... Go on, mate, sorry.
I think the Batman reference there as well is the fact I think he'd been talking about doing Batman, but then he'd actually met Frank Miller and had read half of Dark Knight.
Of course he had.
Before it was, or saw some of the original bits of Dark Knight, and just went, yeah, that's going to keep going for a while. So why try and fight? Fight your place in history with that.
I think as well as he credits Green Arrow because it was the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams stuff that he saw. That got him back. That really got him into reading comics. So he was really into doing it as a character, and he really does grab it, and runs with it.
And establishes, as you say, he then establishes his own mini universe within the DC universe, and
Earth-Grell, I believe they called it, or the Grellverse,
because people in that, but then there's the fact, as I say, he depowers lots of people. He depowers Black Canary in this. And
then later in the ongoing, we meet Green Lantern, but he's just a dude in a suit. He's just Hal. They go camping together.
And there's there's lots of that where you're just like going, this is that whole, we're just placing this character in the universe and just getting on with it, which is a really interesting take. Yeah,
I think that we talk about this. Me and Vince and Dan talk about this whole sort of older heroes thing that I don't know why. I just find it same as Dark Knight, really, and to a certain extent a lot of Watchmen at the time related to heroes later on in their lives returning back to finding what it is that is meaningful to them and why they're doing what they're doing, and that's a big part of this. I think he's an older man, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he's supposed to be set in his sort of early 40s or something in Longbow.
Yeah.
He's a man that spends an awful lot of time wearing no clothes going through the comics.
Fucking hell, does he off? Yeah. There's one point where he's sort of mooning over the fact that Black Canary's gone off to do some investigating, and he's just standing in the window of his house naked. I'd have called the police if I'd have seen him doing that. Yeah.
You say that, but there's a reason you go out running first thing in the morning, and it's so you can swing free as we.
Nobody wears pants. Anyway. And there's also a massive philosophical, what do you call it? Ethical, moral quandary going on in this. Let's talk about this then, shall we? Because this is, I think this plays a big part into the tonal change of the character that leads into an ongoing that lasts another 80 issues. Is the realistic situation in this book is that the pair of them have moved. Him and Dinah have moved to Seattle, so they're in an actual city as opposed to Star City or Metropolis or Gotham. So Grell grounds them immediately.
Yep.
He gives them almost a soap opera-esque, TV style situation to live in. They're living in a florist. They're very much an older couple who are still at it with each other constantly, very much in love still. They're discussing whether or not they should get married. He's got complications. He's aching. He's still he still thinks he's a young man. He's shying away a little bit from responsibilities and throwing his life into the investigation of a serial killer. But the big complication that comes in this book, and it's something that people get wrong when they talk about it, I think. He himself, Grell, in one of the interviews we've read, I think, says he basically got doorstepped by a younger creator and who wrongly accused him of doing something in this book, and it occurs in the first book of the three. Did you want to explain what it was, man?
So yeah, so as I say, it's one of these ones where there's a drug cartel that's going around there, and Diana says that she's going to go out and
Going undercover, isn't
you
she? She says,
do
yeah,
some undercover of that. And the long the short of it is she gets caught and therefore is basically put is tortured
yeah.
and is treated badly, shall we say. And the all of which I do have a small issue with that is more to do with the fact that she's a very highly skilled, trained
Yeah.
hand-to-hand combat fighter, but seems to be taken down awfully easily by a set of guys that
Sort of
aren't.
fat
But
bloke. Yeah.
let's put that to one side for
I
a
mean,
second.
I
That's
think you could,
more,
that can be explained in the fact that we're now in a real world setting, aren't we? Anyone
yeah,
can be walked up behind and bashed on the head.
something's happened.
Yeah,
Something's
yeah,
happened. Yeah. So she's captured, and she and the challenge that was put to Grell was the fact that you end up seeing that she's hanging, wearing the handcuffs from a hook, essentially, um, fairly scantily clad by that point, and the suggestion was that she'd had some form of sexual um, assault.
See, the suggestion has, I think, come from elsewhere.
Mm.
I think what you're saying there is because she's had her clothes ripped off. There's that suggestion that something more has happened.
Yes.
Grell denies that, doesn't he?
Well,
Vehemently
basically,
denies it. Yeah,
he says that there's no, that's not what he portrays in the book.
yeah,
There's what he portrays in the book is basically all you see is the outcome, is the ending position of her having gone through some sort of fight and then some form of torture with these guys. Because there's also, the guy's holding a knife and there's blood running down her and all this sort of stuff as well. So
so
clearly,
undoubtedly
she's
torture. So definitely
has
torture. I'm
certainly
saying,
been
yeah,
beaten up and has had, but the rest is all up to you in your head in terms of what you think happened,
yeah,
right? And obviously, Grell's defense is not the right word for this, but his view is, well, it's up to you to make to take your view with regard to what happened, but also bad things happen to people that don't necessarily and can
yeah,
be horrendously mental torture. It can be as bad,
yeah,
and therefore don't assume that anything that she does after that in terms of how her character changes and stuff is just because of
yeah.
it's been
I
a
think
sexual assault.
I think for
It,
me,
it you know
I think for me, this is there's a so much at play here. It's so, I mean, I remember when I first read this because let's do you want to explain what actually happens in the comic, and we can sort of dive back into what happens later and stuff like that, and obviously the wider implications of can this be shown in the comic, I suppose, Al. You know.
yeah. So as I say, so you've got her captured, and Ollie ends up looking through the window and sees that she's in a position like this, and he rushes through the window to essentially rescue her, and basically fires an arrow and kills the guy.
Straight through the
That's
heart, as the song goes.
yeah.
What that is such a show-stopping page or double page spread for me.
Mm.
I think it shocked me because, and a good story can shock you and often should. It shocked me because this was Green Arrow. This was the man who used to fire boxing glove arrows, net
Yeah.
arrows, and stuff like that. This is the guy. We've built up the moment about how much they love each other, how much he dotes on her, how long they've been together even, and in him is this killer because of that moment, and he kills him.
Yeah.
What a moment! I don't love it because it's a difficult thing to love, but I remember thinking, wow, says so much in that one page, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's quite a it's not a wordly heavy read of a book at all by any stretch of imagination,
Yeah,
but there's all, as you say, it's so proper. There's a lot of dialogue and a lot of chat and
yeah,
backwards and forwards, particularly between various characters. But this whole scene, essentially from once he finds her, is silent.
Yeah.
There's no word balloons at all, and it's like the arrow flies, and bang, you hands back. We've got full page spread of, yes, she's tied up and, as I say, wearing very little by that point, but the arrow's right through the guy's, heart, and
Yeah.
he's just going to go down and fall, bang. At which point, he goes in to rescue her, and there's a continuing fight with one of the other,
Yeah.
or the bad guys that's there, which leads to a really interesting twist.
Yeah, importantly, I think this is hugely important. Shadow turns up, the female archer from Japan, and she kills someone else. And in that moment, there's this massive plays of iconography in this where the two arrowheads are compared, and they're both hunting arrows. They're both killing arrows. And they're both, that you almost see each archer as a significant arrowhead. You recognise the style of the arrowhead, And she turns up, and unflinchingly she does the same.
Well, actually, if I think there's more to it than that.
Right, okay.
Because I think there's a point where he's killed the first guy.
Yeah.
He's got the second guy completely incapacitated, and he takes the knife to basically cut Diana down, and which is what he's doing. And he turns and looks at the dead body that he knows that he is, that was him. He's killed something.
Yeah.
And he's too focused on that he doesn't realize that the third guy's coming through, and it's almost that's where he's now going, shit, things have changed.
Yeah, such a turning point, man.
And
so well done.
It needs Shadow to be there to go, in a weird way, going, yeah, I kill people. That's what I do. You didn't. I didn't. And she makes a comment, and there's a line early on in the book where she goes, I looked into your eyes, and there was no color. There's no color behind your eyes. And then later on in the book, she goes, I previously looked into your eyes, and there was no color, but you've changed, and your eyes have changed.
That's what I love so much about it, man. Yeah.
I think there's an important thing to hear. There is that point where he stops and looks at the dead body, and that's why Shadow has to kill the third one, because and he's left holding down in his arms, and Shadow walks away.
Yeah.
And that's the end of
it.
And
there ain't a man listening to this. Well, there may be, but there ain't a man I know listening to this that, if they had a bow and arrow in their hands, wouldn't do the same. If it was your missus. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's Now, there's a couple of things that come out of this which I found really interesting. So there's a lot of interviews. So Grell speaks about how this younger creator basically doorstepped him at a convention and accuses him of, raping Black Clary, and he said that doesn't happen. And I think the problem is that people don't read comics; they just believe bullshit, and the people who accuse him of this haven't read it, because there's other implications that happen. So further on, like you say, man, the good thing about this is we feel the implications. It's not like old school DC and Marvel where we just move on to the next issue and they'll be fighting a robot or something. The pain, the PTSD, the agony, the anxiety, everything, the bad dreams follow these guys through. The second book opens with a bad dream, with Ollie dreaming of a dragon in a warehouse. And so Dinah starts seeing a counsellor, and she says to the counsellor, people say things like, at least you weren't raped, as if that's the worst thing that can happen. She is totally saying in that second that she was not raped. But of course, the internet doesn't fucking read comics, so they don't notice that happens. And then the other thing I thought was worth mentioning, if you go into the ongoing, which follows on from this, and go to issue 32, Grell cunningly reverses the situation. So Dinah has to save him. I think with a gun, as I recall. It's on the cover actually of issue 32, where she's saving him from torture. So Grell is doing something really interesting here. He's using a love between a man and a woman to cause this situation, that builds this situation up, where it does change Ollie, and Ollie is forever changed for this run of comics. I know things change in comics, but the thing I wanted to mention to ask you is that almost that wider question is, if it was rape, well, let's ignore that. Let's say if it is torture, why can't we show it in comics? Is there a reason we can't, do you think? Is it because he's a superhero and he was like, joke cracking Green Arrow beforehand? Do you think that's why people got upset?
I think, well, sorry, I think that lots of things to unpick with that. I think, I don't think there is a need to show the torture. I think what he's done here is,
Yeah,
as I say, it's
we
just
don't
that
really see it, do we?
well, it's just that here's the outcome.
Hmm.
You know, this is the burnt match type thing. I don't need to, I don't need to see the flame. If I see you've shown me a burnt match, I know that there was a flame. So I don't need to know how hot it was. I don't, I know that it went through that process to get there, and therefore, I was going to say it doesn't matter if she was raped. That is not what I can
That's not what you mean. No, no. Yeah,
like,
yeah,
don't take that snippet on without me. The what I mean is that the fact that she was caught, beaten, strung up, tortured, went through whatever she went through, that's all bad.
yeah. These
Well,
people are people we never saw lose before, did we?
Yeah, there
They
is
may
no
lose for
scale
5 minutes, but they always come back and win. And this is a massive. She's
Hmm.
lost some. She's almost lost her
It's
life there. Yeah,
it's as there's no scale on this. This literally is things happen to her that should not have happened to her. That is it, right? And that's what matters most in this.
yeah. I get you. Yeah, I see what you mean.
It's and therefore it is a case of the mental anguish that she's gone through and the pain and the trauma and whatever, all of which is bad. It doesn't. It is that whole. That's it. It doesn't. The actual specifics of the torture or whatever she went through, don't really matter. The people should go down as a result from a
Yeah.
justice and it must be served type thing.
Yeah, I think
Whether
Grell
it must be
says.
served by being shot through the heart, but that's
Yeah,
another story.
Grell says
Um,
there's a great interview with a website called DCinThe80s.com, and Grell says the son of a bitch deserved to die.
for whatever he did, yeah,
That's
and that's
It's not harsh. It's true.
plus,
Yeah,
and that's where I think there's now. That's not to belittle the fact that, as I say, I think there's, to me, the bigger issue is the fact that this is supposed to be a strong female character that you've then entirely weakened. But as you say, the flip in that comes in the main story, in the other storylines where you flip him as being the weak character.
yeah, and
Now,
the thing is,
his
they both face this sort of
trauma as a result.
yeah, they do, and I think she becomes the stronger character for me.
Yeah.
There's so much going on with her, almost as much as there is going on with him, and he's the title character for a lot of this.
Now, here's my challenge back to you're saying, should we see this in comics?
Yeah,
Is this, or this was shocking in 1987, or shocking in the early 90s when I read it.
yeah,
Would it be shocking now?
that's interesting.
In that,
I think for all different reasons. I think.
I don't think we'd see it in the big two.
That's
right?
the thing.
So
I agree,
right?
man. That's
So
what I
I'd be
was
shocked
thinking.
with that. But if you saw an Image book
No.
or a Dark Horse book that had essentially this storyline, but with here's a character who happens to dress in whatever color and use whatever manual weapon,
No.
I'm not entirely sure that would be as shocking now as it is.
Yeah.
Or it was then. And that's why I think when you talk about this was a tonal shift, this was a tonal shift in terms of DC Comics as a whole. About
Yeah.
saying this, because this is, there's no vertical. I'm not sorry, I'm looking at I've got the actual issues in front of me.
Right.
There's nothing on here that says for mature readers.
Oh wow, interesting.
Okay, it's not Comic Code approved, I'll give you that. But
Because there's quite a lot of nudity ish. There's quite a lot of boning in it ish. There's quite a lot that goes on in it. That you would these days. I think you're right, man. Don't think the big two would. I don't think DC certainly wouldn't do it. I think they'd be too worried about the possible cartoon rights and stuff like that. I think there would also be the ultimate misogyny allegations in relation to it, which is the opposite of what it's doing, in my opinion.
DC are suffering as well from the girlfriend in a fridge.
Yes, they
storyline,
still
isn't
are.
it? Which
Yeah,
is
yeah, they're still suffering from that.
But it's it's a weird twist for me about going. I think this book is very beautiful to look at, all sorts of stuff. But I think it's hugely important from a history of comics perspective
Yeah, me
But as
too.
a reading it here and now today perspective, if you're a brand new reader, I'm not entirely sure it quite carries the same weight as
Okay,
it does for those of us that have that historical connection to it.
interesting. I
And I think people find the same with Watchmen and Dark Knight. That
yeah,
and it's partially because you're left going, oh, he puts a hood on, whatever. I've seen Green Arrow. Everyone's like going,
yeah,
well, yeah,
yeah.
but
That's true.
and it's a lovely twist of the way they actually do that. But how because there's always this interesting thing about how do you change a superhero's costume? But to go, we've moved to Seattle. It's a bit colder. You'll need something a
Yeah,
bit more, or
I
it
mean,
rains a lot. You'll
that's
need a hood.
literally what happened. I think because he
Yeah,
moved to Seattle. That's why it's there. Because Mike moved to Seattle, and
yeah.
and he says, and he'd worn what's stuff that superhero costumes are always made out of. He'd worn it in one of his live action, yeah, whatever. And he said, no. He says when it's raining, it's cold. You just need to have trousers. So
Yeah.
even if you look at him, he's wearing trousers. They're just green
Mm,
trousers.
mm.
And this hood because it rains a lot in Seattle. To be fair, God bless Gold and Silver Age DC, and I love it almost as much as you do. But that hat would never made any sense to me, my friend. You know.
No, no, but it always never made sense to me either that Green Arrow could potentially have some sort of secret identity when you're like going, how many people are walking around with that goatee? Come on.
No.
And
Yeah.
I refer to myself as somebody that used to have a moustache and beard that made me quite, gave
Yeah,
me
I
a
get
lot
you.
of identification. Um,
We've experienced it
so
now because we all wore masks during COVID, and everyone could still recognise everyone. Yeah,
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 yeah.
made no sense.
But so I think, look, the scene is quite shocking in terms of what's there in the book. I think media as a whole has moved on, and therefore, right or wrongly, it's not as shocking a scene as it perhaps would have been.
Yeah,
I think it would now get called out for other reasons.
yeah.
Um,
By people who didn't understand it. Yeah.
yeah. The whole thing about the young creator calling out, I still think that wasn't recent. I think that
No,
was
I don't think
similar
it was. Yeah.
because you and I refer to it from this Tomorrow's book, and that in itself is a collection of. I'm trying to find out when
Yeah,
this
so it
was
was a
actually
while
published.
ago, I think, that one. Yeah, it's a great book. I'm going to give a little list of some of the research material we've used at the end of this, because this is
Yeah,
another
yeah.
one where me and Alan have gone a bit mad and read everything in the world. I saw that you'd said something about Tomorrow's. You did some Green
Mm,
Arrow art, didn't you?
yeah,
You painted him. It looked lovely, man. Looked
yeah.
great.
Oh,
And
thank you.
you said, "Oh, I've been reading this too much." Right, I've got to get that. Where's that? I've got it here somewhere. So I made sure I read it. So I was keeping up with you. Yeah, I think one of the other things we should talk about here is, we've talked a little bit about what happened to Black Canary and the implications for her, but there is another very strong female character in this called Shadow, who
Yeah,
the thing is, for a while here, Green Arrow couldn't win a fucking fight with a hamster. He loses to her, doesn't he, at one point?
yeah,
And then he sort of recovers. He almost like relearns his life as an archer. And she has this. So whilst he's got the discipline of an archer, of a Hollywood trick shooter, and he's a big fan of the Errol Flynn movie, as I was as a kid, and that's where he lives in archery. And then this Eastern archer turns up, and I remember seeing. I don't know if you ever saw this, the Richard Chamberlain series, Shogun. Did you ever see that?
yeah. Oh yes.
In the first episode of that, he's arguing with this Japanese dude. He's at a dinner party, and he's saying, "My gun, my flintlock gun is far superior to your bow." And he says, "Well, shoot the post outside or something." And he says, "Well, I can't see the post outside." And he fires off three arrows from his Japanese longbow and hits this post outside because
Mm,
he knows where it is, and you get that sense of. I think Grell describes it really well. He says there's the difference between America or Western and Japanese archery is, in Western archery you pull the bow with your arm, and in Japanese archery you pull the bow with your spirit, which I think is a really interesting way of putting it. And she brings that Zen art of archery. This is a great book, by the way, if you can find it. That I was a bit of an archer as a teenager and in my 20s, and experimented with longbows, and it was a really really inspiring method of archery to read about, And she's very enigmatic, but you sense that of everyone in the book, she's the one who gets Ollie, in a way.
yes. As I say, I used the term yin and yang earlier. And that's because there is a bit of a classic cliche here in that she's everything he's not. To be,
Yeah.
as in he's the older man, she's the young girl. Um, he's, as you say, he's losing his abilities, and she's gaining all of hers in terms of being the top of her game and all this sort of stuff. She has, or she appears to act without passion,
Yeah.
where he's all about passion. And it is that it's that coming together again because they recognize that they have the same skill, and then the murder scene,
Yeah.
or the killing scene where she's suddenly going, I have the respect for you. You're doing the
Yeah.
right thing by that, and we're, yes, I'm here to kill for revenge. You've now killed for revenge. I'm now here to, and I will now be that person. I'll stay on that track. And that's why I think there's this interesting dichotomy between the two of them. And the fact that he'll then not follow it through in book 3 about, when he hunts her down on the mountainside.
Yeah.
And,
There's a great
which
moment.
leads to some beautiful pieces of
Oh
art.
my
But
God, it's so amazingly beautiful. There's a scene on the mountain where that she appears near him, and they're about to shoot at something, and it looks like he's shooting. He turns towards her, and he looks like he's shooting at her, but what he's actually doing is shooting beyond her. So Eddie Fires, who's this recurring character, I think he still appears. He's been in Arrow as well, I think. He's beyond her, and he shoots fires. And it's such a great scene. The choreography on it, the sense of place. I think it's very important when you're dealing with a comic where you're shooting lumps of wood across a room, to know in your mind as the reader where everyone is standing and what everyone is doing. And he pulls that off so well, doesn't he? Throughout all these scenes we've talked about, you know where everyone is, don't you?
yeah.
Beautifully done.
Oh, yeah. And
Go on, mate,
yeah.
sorry.
I was going to say the interesting twist at the end as well is that while you've got all this thing happening about, it's a drug bust and all this sort of stuff, it turns out that it's government backed.
Yeah.
And essentially it's the Iran-Contra storyline, which is very interesting because he actually wrote this before the Iran-Contra storyline.
Didn't he get asked on a radio show? Have you heard this? Yeah. He's contacted by a radio show, and could you come in and talk about, your comic? And he goes, oh, brilliant. So he rushes home, gets on the phone or whatever it is, goes in the studio, whatever it is, and all they want to ask him about is how he predicted Iran-Contra before it happened. He's like, this is luck.
Well, he's basically I was involved in, well, no, he said I was involved in that sort of thing, and I just put all the bits together, and I went, well, that's got to be happening somewhere in the background.
Yeah.
Because he does have a military background. Yeah, and so it's just amusing from that side. But that, and again, which means that the ending of the book is essentially him getting, going up against the CIA and saying, right, okay, well, take these people down, but I'll end up taking the money from the.
Yeah, I like that. I like that he takes money because
money.
it takes you straight back to some of the first pages of the book where he is looking at a Robin Hood picture painting. So he's stealing off the rich to give to the poor, and that's how it ends, isn't it? He's got that bag of money. He thought, oh, fuck you, I'm going to take this. It's almost like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's what sets up the ongoing series in some ways because, as I say, it's that old thing about how can how does he afford those amazing toys? It's a case of this is how.
Yeah, I need to have the CIA.
That's the seed money that he got to begin with to kick it off and get going with.
I mean, the ongoing leads into so many great things. I mean, we get a walkabout in America. We get the Eddie Fires character who comes back, who is, I think, one of my favourite characters in DC because he's sort of this. He's visually based on Archie Goodwin, which I didn't realise till yesterday when I texted you. Like suddenly, that lightning bolt.
When you said it, it was like, oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
and it's because everybody, as I said to you, Bags, that everybody loves Archie.
Yeah, exactly. They do, don't they? Yeah. We get the Connor Hawks.
The most referenced editor in terms of visual representations.
And certainly in this one, this podcast, we've mentioned him more than others. The good thing about Eddie is he's a killer. He's absolutely lethal, but he looks like somebody you wouldn't look at in the street. He's not a big guy or anything like that, but he's got the absolute hots for Black Canary, isn't he? And he's always trying to wrestle her. There's a couple of incidents where he says, I can't beat her. She's amazing. I can't beat her. Like that. And it's just like, I've got one more round. And he's like that with her. It's just weird. But he takes a big role later on when Connor Hawke takes over on the ongoing, which it just carries on brilliantly. I really love it. It's really good. So what I thought we could do is maybe just pick a couple of moments out from the series, the 3 issues. Al, if there's anything that sort of sticks out to you, I might start, if that's all right.
Yeah, on you go. Mm-hmm.
I love, typical of me really, but I love the relationship between the two. And he's rabbiting on in the first issue about something, and she sort of disappears off. And he does that sort of fake, shoots himself in the head and falls down as if, why am I even telling her? She's not even listening. Yeah. And then she appears wearing the blonde wig down the stairs. And it's all around this. He's asked her to have kids, and I think get married from memory, and she doesn't want to, and she uses the phrase, "I won't make orphans," which I think is a real moment, but they also make love as well, and I think that they're such a real feeling couple in this, which I've never felt at other times about them. I think this cements their relationship so well that it goes all the way through to the Green Arrow Black Canary wedding special, decades later. They are cemented in DC lore now as a couple because of the Longbow Hunters, to me. I don't know if you think the same.
Yeah, yes. As it's the piece that makes them, as you say, the grouping that there is no separating them from that. It's are they DC Summers and Grey? I don't know. It's
okay. Yeah, could be.
Maybe there's a bit of that. Yeah.
What about you?
In terms of my first bit, and this is unusual for me. I'm actually going to say the covers.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, they're thematically lovely, aren't they?
We don't really talk about them an awful lot. All 3 are wraparound covers in terms of the actual 3 prestige formats that came out. And that the first cover itself, I think it's very iconic. Everyone would know, anyone that's ever been into a comic shop will have seen that cover, frankly.
Yeah.
Because it's, and rightly so. And it just shows that transition from the Errol Flynn hat to the here I am, the urban hunter.
Yeah.
But the whole wraparound piece to the back, which has got the mix of here's the Seattle skyline, but Mount Fuji in the background as well.
I think it's meant to be, yeah. I think so.
And and the fact that there's the dagger there, which for the serial killer that's in issue 1.
Yeah.
All of which I think that just sets the tone of what you're going to get into with the books, and the fact that the issue 2 is a red cover to punch back and say here we are with with the dragon hunt, and the fact that Shadow's going to take things in a completely different direction. And then the third cover is essentially the painted mountain scene.
Oh, so good.
Well, again, it's got the wolves in it because it's calling out the hunting piece and all that sort of stuff. And I just think it's important to make sure that they get referenced and get their own commentary. So there's my first bit.
This is one of the things I like about Grell is we were talking about McGuinness just before we started, weren't we? The sort of paperback artist, the Steranko stuff and Frazetta stuff and stuff. He looks on occasion, especially these sort of things, as someone who would have appeared as a pulp book cover artist.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the other thing as well is you can see his art being quite influenced by the European style.
Yeah.
Any of these could have been Bond Destiny, Bond Destiny.
Oh man, I love an oversized of these. Yeah.
That sort of look about it as well, because it's that classical 70s 80s US comic feel about it.
Yeah, agree, man. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that one as well. There's a lot going on it. I know we talked about this before. Is the use? He plays with timing in this, I think, or pacing. I suppose we should put it as better. So we get he's great with, like, for example, when Green Arrow's in the police department talking to the cop about the serial killer, or there's prostitutes on the street and everyone's dealing crack, because this was the time of the, you know, the massive crack outbreak in New York and LA and stuff. And he's great with that. But what he does is he puts little pauses in to the reading by using these like 2-color images, and often they're, like you say, on darker paper, with white pen or something like that. I'm not sure exactly how you do it. You're the artist, but but they're often of people's faces, and eyes. Occasionally, you get the eye thing, don't you, across 2 pages of him and Shadow looking at each other.
Yeah, there's a really good example on pages 26 to 27 of book 3, where they're halfway up the mountain type thing.
Yeah.
And the first panel is the 2 arrowheads pointing at each other, but the 2 pages.
That. Yeah.
It's, you know, there's in the middle of the page on page 26, it's her eyes, and then on the other page, staring back at her, it's his eyes in the, you know, with the green domino effect of the mask, and it's that whole backwards and forwards between those pages, you know, and you feel the tension in the string, in the bow. Because it's the whole, you know, arguably it could just be 2 talking heads, but the way that he paces that out of going, here's what the look is, and here's, you know, we're going to stare at each other while.
I love that so much. And to me, anyone who's ever been in a, you know, boxing match or a fight or anything, that's, the eyes are so important in a fight. You know, we don't see it enough. The meeting of eyes as you're fighting someone is incredible, and you know, it's the old samurai story of 2 men look at each other across a bridge and they realise they'll never win and they walk away. You know, and it's done so well like that. But there's a poetry to his work. I think there really is. There's a fluidity and a beauty, and it's bear in mind this came out, you know, very similar to Dark Knight and Watchmen, and it's sort of contemporary books. It's almost slightly more classical in its styling, I think, but no less well done, but just so different to them, I think. Yeah.
And maybe that's what I mean by European.
Yeah, that's true.
If this had been serialized in Metal Hurlant or whatever, you'd have gone, or Heavy Metal, you'd have gone, yeah, fine. Again, it would have just fitted there. Yeah. In terms of that sort of style.
Yeah. Is there another one you wanted to mention, dude?
Look, there's loads of those sort of images, and I think there's a really. The page 19 of book 2, there you go, the one where he's lying in the bed on his own, and it's just that whole, the way he blows the candle out in a, you know, with it's the use of negative space that he uses quite a lot as well, of only drawing half a face, but you see, you know where everything else is, and using the background to be dark to call forward his foreign, which helps the fact that it's a blonde character. But yeah, the empty bed. Or him in the bed on his own, I should say.
Yeah.
It creates a pause. You know, you get the feeling from that one image of him just going, all right, where are we? Despite the fact he's naked underneath that sheet, because naked all the other pages.
He seems to be naked a lot. The storytelling ability of Grell isn't talked about enough, because other comics would just have him go looking for his girlfriend, but this gives an emotional motivation for him pages later to get out in the street and try and find it, which I find really interesting.
And I think that's one of the things, obviously, that from an editorialship perspective, giving him the space to breathe in a 48-page book rather than the 22-page book helps there as well, because it had that thing of going, right, I'm going to feel lonely, and then I'm going to start being out in the streets. And actually, he only comes across her by accident while he's doing something else. But, you know, he's like going, yeah, she can have her space. She's allowed to go and do the undercover work. He's not against that at all.
Yeah.
And he just happens to bump into her while doing a different investigation, and then goes, all right, I know where she is. Which then leads him to go find her later on. And
yeah, so good, man.
Situation.
Is he a creator that you followed to Image when he did stuff like Maggie the Cat and Shaman's Tears and stuff like that at all? Or?
I did not, but again, that's just, you know, volume of things you can read at any point in time.
Yeah,
I know that. I know I'm not speaking to the right person about that. The
Silly. What about his Sable stuff? Did you read any of that? Or
So I've read again bits and pieces of that. I'm not.
yeah,
I'd love to go back and follow your example there and collect a lot of the first runs, first comic runs.
yeah, such a company, man, such a company. Yeah, in that Sable's he poses as a kids book creator, who's also another sort of hunter of men. There's like a one where there's a sort of Die Hard episode issue. There's a hunting in Africa issue. There's a couple of a bit of finding big game hunt, attacking big game hunters in Africa stuff that is straight out of that Yellowstone prequel. I don't know if you watched that. Was it called 1923 or something like that?
Yes.
And it's almost panel for panel, like shot for shot from that. It's incredible. Yeah. Yeah, very like that. I'd recommend the first Sable one, definitely. The second Sable one is done by someone else, I think, mostly on the art. But the first one's really good.
The other book of his that I would really recommend to people is Permission to Die, which is the James Bond book that
of course.
he did with, I think, Eclipse Comics.
Okay.
Which again is a 3-issue mini done in prestige format. It's very good. It's it's Bond and all that sort of stuff. Again, it's been a long time since I've read that, I must admit, but I do remember it very, very fondly.
Yeah.
So no, that would be my other one to call it for that.
Cool. I've met him a couple of times. Cool. Absolutely lovely. Absolutely lived up to the expectations of just being a gent, friendly, chatty. Really interesting. He does run the odd Kickstarter. Keep an eye out for them. The stuff. He's written a couple of Sable novels, which I think you can find. I got a bit of OA off him. You've got a bit of OA off him, haven't you, as well, I think? Oh, you got a commission, didn't you, off him?
I've got a sketchbook,
Yeah, cool. So definitely try and find his stuff. I thought it might be useful before we just quickly chat to you about your projects is some of the resources we use. There's a great Comics Journal interview you can find online. Panel Borders did a podcast about him, the Brighton-based podcast. Tomorrow's have got some brilliant stuff on him. Mike Grell, Life is Drawing Without an Eraser is their book. A collection of a lot of stuff. Moving Target by Sequart, which is a lovely book that's all about Green Arrow, and he obviously features heavily in it. Dollar Bin Bandits is a podcast where they do an interesting interview with him, which is really interesting from the point of view of his origin story in comics. There's a Warlord Worlds podcast, which is about him as an individual and mostly his Warlord stuff. DC in the 80s is a great podcast, a great website, and you can also find his OA at catskillcomics.com. And you can actually request a commission from him on there. There's sort of reasonable prices on there, actually. Pretty good. So go and do that. But yeah, absolute joy. One of my favourites. I know we often chat backwards and forwards, don't we, Al, about what about this book? What about this book? And we've both sort of recommended books, gone, I'm not feeling that, I'm not feeling this.
Yeah.
And then you went, what about Longbow Hunters? And it was like a light bulb went off. I went, fuck yes, let's do that. And I
knew it would tickle you, but I knew you'd be read all the pieces.
Gave me something to do over Christmas.
To me, it's a very who would I recommend this to? Anybody that understands the history of comics, and it's a book for that piece.
Also, if you're into archery,
if you're into archery, if you are more into the slapstick side of the character, then perhaps not the one for. It's not the book to go down,
Also, it's not a team book. So I think if you read stuff like Batman or Superman or Green Arrow at the moment, Flash, everything's a freaking team book at the moment. This is not a team book. This is about a man like soul searching himself, and for that I think I enjoy it more. I'm never keen when the lone urban hunter it becomes a flipping team book. I've had enough of that. But yeah, definitely, man. I dug out I remember when I reread this last Christmas. I dug out my old recurve bow from the garage and strung it up. I used to love a bit of archery, and this is one of the reasons I used to do it. This book, very much so. Good stuff. Okay, right, cool. So, as I understand it, you're getting near to something. Is that right? Are you able to talk about that yet?
So, 10 pages away. No,
oh right,
8
is that
pages
it?
away. So
nice.
It's not even that. It's less than that. I think I only need to draw 10 more comic strips or something like that. 10 more comic strips, and then the Fat Penguin sings. It's over. We're finished. We're done.
Oh right. Okay.
It is the.
Are you calling it the Fat Penguin sings?
Yes.
Oh, nice.
Well, no. So I will have a strip where a fat penguin will sing. And that will be the end of the Penguin. But at that
Wow.
point in time, I will have enough for what is the what will be for now. Never say never and all that.
Yeah.
Who knows? People come back as
Yeah.
or
Look at Green
Doctor Who
Arrow.
knows
Yeah.
anybody can come back.
Yeah.
Um, but no, I'm going to say that this is it. And the book, The Bell, will go out through Kickstarter late January.
Oh, okay. Quite soon.
Um,
Yeah.
so it will, the bell will toll for the Penguin, and that will be that. Uh, yeah, all of which just gives me the chance to do that puerile children's joke as well at the end of it, and just say this is the bell end of the Penguin.
Good stuff. That's
But
what we like.
we
We like
shall see where
puerile.
we get to with
We're
some of
we're
that.
fans of
But
the
yeah,
puerile. That's quite an achievement, man. Have you worked out how many strips you'll have done? Is it?
so the different ways to think about it, you can either turn around and say that's 12 years,
Yeah.
or it's just over 2,500 strips.
Wow.
Depending on how you count it, 2,700 strips if you count it a different way. But that's enough. There are only, people are going to challenge me why end it, and it's more. I could argue that I'm bitter and twisted by the algorithm. I could argue that it's the splintering of the
Social
social
media
media
world.
that
Yeah.
means that just reaching an audience is just about impossible. I actually even did a strip on that recently where it was the Penguin walks through a door and shouts into the void, "Oh, is there anybody out there?" And called it Internet Marketing 101. Um, and but I'm brutally honest. I'm tired, and
That's
life is
quite an
busy,
achievement, man, though. I think there's no one
and
who could accuse you of half-arsing that, my friend. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just not convinced there's any clean dad jokes left either. From now on, it would
Maybe
start to
see
get closer and
the
closer to the
Penguin
bone.
After Dark.
PG After Dark is often been talked about, and maybe that will be the return. Which
What other
so
animals would you like to do 2,700 strips on?
well, see, it's one of these ones where I always joke that I came up with the name Penguin and then started drawing penguins because I thought I really liked the name. And I did come up with another name, but then I found it had actually already been used in something else because I
Ah,
thought you
okay.
could do crocodiddles was going to be the other one.
Oh, has that been used, is it?
Yes, somebody's done
Ah,
crocodiddles,
okay.
or yeah. But I would have thought, yeah, you could have loads of crocodile drawings as well, just for the hell of it.
Good.
So no,
So we'd be looking around
that's
the
not
end
bad.
of January to back that. You're
End of
going to,
January. I say mid-January. I hope I'll start doing the whole thing about sign up now.
yeah, of
In January, hope to launch it. You know me, I want it all over and done with inside this tax year.
course
Uh,
you do. Yeah, of course you do. Yeah, you're
so,
a very canny man around that.
and well, just yeah,
Yeah.
not really, but that's it's more just like there's what's the hassle?
Because
Um,
it tends to fund quite quickly, your book, doesn't it? It's usually, what,
It's
6 hours
look
or
at
something?
oh
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, who am I paying? I'm not paying me. I'm just paying I just need to get the
Print
print
costs.
run
Yeah.
covered. And the advantage of using Kickstarter is you get to reach the world at large, and I can say that I'm big in Finland and things like that as a result,
Yeah.
which is always good for that. So it's keeping it simple and keep it out and running, and then I'll do the farewell tour around whoever will have me. And I say it's all over. I've got a garage full of books I'll need to sell, so I'll still be having to
Yeah.
go to
You'll
all
still be
sorts of
making comics. It just won't be
ones and
Penguins
things.
one, I'm guessing.
And
Yeah.
that's well, that's my plan.
Yeah.
And I don't know what people say what next, and the advantages I'm currently saying I don't know.
Yeah.
So which is a good thing.
That's fun. Yeah. Well, yeah. I don't think you don't seem to be the sort of person who feels any pressure, but occasionally we do put ourselves under pressure to get stuff done, don't we? You know, and
It's
not having that
well,
I've got to put another strip out today kind of feeling is nice sometimes.
yeah, and
No deadline
it
woes, I
has
suppose. Yeah.
yeah no doubt. Well, as I say, it was one of the ones that you do your year-end retrospective of yourself and all that sort of stuff. And I was like, I've not been that creative this year in terms of things. And I went, so, okay, a strip has gone out every day on the Penguin.
Yeah.
And I realized that I'd only created 153 new
Fucking hell.
ones. Right. And I was like, when you start saying that creating 153 daily strips is disappointing,
Yeah.
perhaps you need to rethink your choices with regard to what you're doing with it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what part of my thing about going, look, we can do, and look, there's 2,000 strips there. I can repeat that ad infinitum for, and people can continue to get their little hit every day.
Yeah.
So
Good
So if
stuff, man.
anyone is listening, and I am still looking for a pull quote to go
Oh, of
into
course you are. Yeah, yeah.
the into some of the marketing blurb. Um, I'm not asking yourself
You know
because
you've got one from me anyway.
you've been used previously.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
So I'm looking for it. But if anyone, so I've got one pull quote
The best book for the
that
downstairs lav. I believe
that's
something
right.
like that, wasn't it? Yeah.
Well, or somebody said that, and you certainly said it. One of your favorite toilet books.
That's it.
So
Yeah, yeah. And it is. It's the
which
best
is
thing to have. There was always Giles when I was growing up. There was always a Giles
mm,
book in the loo or something. And having a Penguin book in the loo is always like you can pick it up, read a couple, do your morning business, and then always I prefer to it doing the morning paperwork, which people in my office still look at me strangely, but technically that's what I'm doing. Yeah,
I do think
definitely.
pull quotes are an interesting thing because I mean nobody pays any attention to them whatsoever, but it's fun and games about. And I say last time I got one from Stuart Mulrain where he had said something and he went, "Oh, but you always put a smile on my wife's face," and I thought I'm having that.
Yeah,
I'm up. And
that's
when
good.
I mentioned it in front of Damien, and he said, "You can say you also put a smile on my wife's face." And I was like, "That'll do. Thank you very much." There's two pull quotes. I just think,
Yeah.
putting smiles on other wives'
It's
faces
in
for
keeping
the
with the
last 10
books, the
years.
vibe of the book, isn't it, as well, those sort of pull quotes. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Good. And
That's
where
fine.
can
I
people
want to
find you,
tribute.
Matt?
Oh, just
Yeah.
follow at Penguin on all sorts of forms of social media anymore. I'm not even going to begin to,
Are you on Blue Sky and all
Instagram,
that sort of thing?
X, Blue. Yes, I'm on Blue Sky.
Okay, you.
Which and I'm on Threads.
Oh, yeah. I'm on Threads.
Yeah,
I don't
which
understand
is
it, but yeah.
weird and wonderful. And this is the point. And there are different people on different things, but you're
Yeah.
now, heck, I'm still on Tumblr for those that really want to go that far back.
Yeah, yeah. Deviant
Um,
Art.
I'm not on DeviantArt, oddly enough, but
I
that's
found in the garage the other day, I found a print I ordered off DeviantArt. You used to be able to order some of the art off there, didn't you, as
yeah,
prints?
yeah.
And I got this massive Gabriel Hardman print on there.
Mm,
I'd forgotten all about. Yeah, it's one of those too big to frame. Has just sat in the tube for about
uh,
15 years or something. It's yeah, okay.
one of these days we'll win the lottery and be able to have the big mansion house.
Oh
And,
mate, yeah, yeah,
so that's what you're telling me is you've built your summer house, or not, let's call it a
yeah.
shed,
A shed.
and you didn't get a sliding wall that could get the big art up.
Well, yeah, I've got a Durf I'm going to put up this week in there. But I've got the space. It depends because the way you do teams, you can see the wall behind me. So I'm just thinking, what do I want to put up there? A load of like made up certificates or something for a laugh, or do I put a load? Because usually you've seen me on Zoom. It's just like a load of shelves that are sagging.
Well, you've seen me on Zoom. Mine. I've got my collectible
Oh
plates
yeah,
that
I laughed saw them
which
earlier. Yeah,
which I got as a
yeah,
joke for which I got a couple, and then the guy offered me a couple more for a cheap price. I went, yeah, go on, and I put them up in the living room on the um in the display cabinet, thinking, I wonder how long before Mrs. H spots that. And a week, but this shows how often we go into the dining room.
yeah.
A week passed, and then suddenly there was a, what the hell are these things? And I was like, oh, they've been found, and had to be taken down and found
Yeah,
new homes. So
I
currently
know.
sit behind me just
Well, the
for
good thing about
um,
having the shed, which I managed to find somewhere on eBay that makes street signs,
mm,
and I've called it the bullpen, and I made a street sign
right.
for it, which is quite cool. And I've put all of my comics reference books in there, so it's freed up a load of shelves in here in the comic room. So I'm slowly spreading out. It's terrible, isn't it? Isn't it terrible?
Well, that's yeah.
I'm almost
The more
60
shelves you
now.
have, the more things we can fill.
I'm almost 60. I've got what 15 years left in me. Why do I keep buying more comics? Why? Who knows? But there you go. Thanks, man. That was a
It's
good one.
like Everest, it's there. That's
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
Anyway, good stuff.
Thanks, man. Yeah, thanks for coming on. Never Own Anything. You can listen to this website over at neverownanything.com. Listen to this podcast at neverownanything.com as well. Every Wednesday, I'm putting my favourite read of the week and my worst read of the week. It's quite an eye opener this week, so go and have a look at that on the review section, which I'm sort of blogging as a little column every week I'm putting up as well as this. So go and have a look at that. Awesome Comics podcast. We've got a really interesting one this week about a documentary some people are making, so I think you'll probably enjoy that one. And then a big name the week following, which we're quite excited about, which I'll probably tell Alan about in a second. Everything's coming up roses. I'm going to be at Angoulême in a few weeks' time. Falpy, Eamon Clark, Simon Russell, all people who've been on this podcast, Sam Arthurs, there's a few of us going to be there, so come and say hi if you're at Angoulême. And then after that, probably the next one I'm going to do is going to be Heroes in Charlotte. So if you're at Heroes, come and say hi as well. So that's what we've got lined up. We've got a couple of books. I've got to make some dates and times. Dave Cranner's coming back on. A few other people are coming back on. We've got an artist round table coming back on. I'll be bending Al's ear to get him choose another book because that was a cracker. But otherwise, thanks for listening. Thanks, Al. And see you soon.